the other day about a childhood trauma, and I want to expand a little more on that. I've had a few questions arise people have wanted to know, so I thought I'd be vulnerable today. When I was growing up, my parents did not have a stable and secure relationship. And just after I got married, my mom became preoccupied with the distance between my parents, and it became the focus of all her relationships. Because she was preoccupied, I lost out on a lot of motherly support in those years. And when my youngest was 2, the dis-ease within her took over, and she put herself in an assisted living center and then a couple years later onto a nursing home. Her physical body had given in to the loneliness she felt. Some of the problems came from her marriage, and a lot came from her childhood, but neither of them were looked at or addressed. And that is one of the reasons why I am so passionate about healing, about not being afraid to look, because it doesn't get better, and then you die. This was a phrase I used a lot as I mourned her death that first year after she died. Her death was the beginning of a bunch of traumas, and that made me had to make a choice about the future of my life. I needed to get some tools for really feeling better, or life was going to get dark. That was in 2015, and in 2016 was the beginning of my transformation, and I am still transforming. I'm still healing. So I never got to ask my mom about the normal things a daughter would want to know from her mom as she was raising her kids. And if you could see her headstone, you would see 2 women's names along with my dad. And so yes, my dad was remarried before the headstone was placed, even at my tearful request not to. In the case of these traumatic situations, it wasn't about the things that necessarily happened to me that caused trauma to exist within me. It was about the things that didn't happen. Trauma is often associated only with these big catastrophic events. And these events may be traumatic, but trauma is what happens in the body, or actually more precisely in the brain. It's in the brain. Trauma is the fast beating heart. It is the change in oxygen levels in the blood. It is the sweat on the hands. Trauma is the reaction to the stressors, not the event that causes it. For most of us, the way we deal with trauma is to simply wait it out. Our amazing body eventually gets our system back on track as the trauma goes, what we could say, dormant until the next time it gets triggered, you might say. And you've noticed, and I've noticed, that we're getting a little bit more aware of these triggers. And you'll find that people, as they talk, they might mention and warn people that they might be talking about triggering events. And they might, for those that have a similar traumatic event. And this is good that we've started to do this as a society, but there is something better. Removing the trauma from the body is a real thing. I've compared trauma before to, it seems like a little ball of electricity. It's kind of like a blood clot. This is the only way I can describe it. And when the trauma passes through the energy of the heart or the thoughts in the mind, like the blood clot goes through the heart or the brain, it can wreak havoc. And I have been trained in a very simple and effective method for trauma release. And when I am doing the release on a person, I can actually feel the electricity in their head. I can feel it, and it actually sometimes makes my body shiver as it releases. And once we remove the trauma, it is important to set up boundaries that we need to feel safe. making sure and being super careful that we are not building walls. And we must know the difference between building walls and building boundaries. Removing trauma does not remove the experience from our minds or make the feelings change into happy ones. It simply discharges the spark. It is vital to release the trauma from the body. And I was watching a YouTube video with Peter Levine, and he has amazing things on trauma. And I agree with his quote. And he says, although humans rarely die from trauma, if we do not resolve it, our lives can be severely diminished by the effects. Some people have described even the situation as living death. And I think that was the way for my mom for a lot of years. On camera, this YouTube video, Peter Levine was working with a war veteran, and he was this gorgeous young man. And this young man had a severe tic, and very similar to one if an explosion happened right in front of you, that reaction, and which is actually what happened to this hero. He was had an explosion. And as Peter Levine worked with him to release the trauma, those involuntary movements almost completely diminished. It was kind of amazing. It was a miracle. And even though, again, like I say, the thoughts and feelings are not all of a sudden gone as we release the trauma, but the body's response changes, and then healing can begin. So I don't talk about my trauma to disparage my parents. In my dad's world, getting married was right and good for him. And at the very same time, it wasn't right and good in my world. And these are the complexities of life. My hurt requires my healing, and I am so grateful for the handful of people that have helped me thus far. Our closest relationships are deeply affected by our trauma. And I believe we're so used to it that we think dysfunction is normal in our society. We might think that secure and stable are idyllic or belong in fantasy land or fairy tales. But secure, stable, supportive relationships are the way life is meant to be lived. Emotional attunement between intimately related people is as vitally important to one's well-being, whether that well-being is physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, than anything else we might need. To repeat that, emotional attunement between intimately related people is as vitally important to one's well-being as anything else might be. We need mental stability, emotional, physical, and spiritual. When these things are not in place, we need healing, and it doesn't matter if the other person gets healing, as hard as that is to hear sometimes. Life will improve as you do your own work. But waking up grateful for our lives every day is how we should feel most of the time. That should be okay. It is not impossible. It's not too much to ask. So May 8th, 2021, I am teaching an all-day class near Salt Lake City, Utah, and there will be just a small in-person audience. Because of COVID-19, only 25 people can attend the studio taping of this. But that just means that if you're there, you get a more personalized experience. That's my goal. Once the filming from that day has been edited, it will be available as an online class. You can buy tickets to the live event in person or pre-sell for the online class at thewholenessnetwork.com/retreats. You can reach out to me if you need more information on that. But please join me if there's things that you would like to move forward in. I would love to meet you in person and feel your greatness. I know it's there. I have never taught the information that I'm going to teach on May 8th, and I think it's going to be one of my best classes. In one day, we are going to basically workshop your life. We're going to find where you are strong and where you need some support and healing. And then we're going to begin that healing that day. You'll see a difference and feel a difference. I'm teaching about the idea that we have these 8 life centers. We have a family life, a work life, a love life, our inner life, our economic life, our social life, our creative life, and our divine life. Each of these life centers create the wholeness of our experience. Each of them need care and attention. And they need permission to be what you want them to be. So it's going to be a life-changing day, and I invite you to join me. For those that are here, you can use a promo code, Mechelle, that's all lowercase, Mechelle, to get $30 off the ticket price. And tickets sell fast, so grab yours today. I hope to help you see and just get out on paper your life, what you want, what you need to get there, what you define yourself as a success in those areas, and what is significant, and what's caused you to just live in surviving of those. So I hope to see you then. We'll see you next time.